This episode beginning was cheap and the lowest point of revenge. If I had to pick the most bad episode of season 2, maybe of the whole show, it would be this one. Nolan's allusions to Aiden as James Bond was funny, but seeing him act like a cheap version of this British agent is no fun at all. Spoiler alert. The only thing worse was his failed attempt to assassinate Victoria. You can see how desperate the showrunners must have been by trying to make us believe Emily could die in this episode. That was really ridiculous, cause we all knew that if Emily was dead the show would be over. So they could only kill her in the show's finale. But obviously someone said they had to turn back to the things that worked in season 1. I think that was the reason why we finally got a new takedown and why they spring back and forth in time at the beginning of this episode. After all, this was the intriguing part of the second half of season 1. About Aiden and Emily talking at the beach house. As uncomfortable as it is to watch this scene, I like that they finally talk things through in order to go on with the plan and still be together with Aiden. It has to be absolutely clear that he knows and accepts why she is going to be Daniel's girlfriend again. And he needs to trust her so that their relationship can work under these very odd and complicated circumstances. I really loved how they made it not only a test for their relationship, but also for their character strength. Emily asked a lot of Aiden, giving her carte blanche to sleep with Daniel. He must be so pissed of this and afraid that she dumps him to be with Daniel. Which is really stupid to think of him, as he is obviously the better choice. He knows and understands her in a way Daniel never can. She is constantly lying to Daniel and playing a role when she is with him. At least that must be something Aiden sees despite his jealousy. But Aiden maybe has a bigger problem here, feeling not good enough for Emily. After all, on the surface Emily and Daniel seems to be the perfect match. Both insanely rich with good manners and beautiful faces. Aiden always seemed like the little rough rugby guy with a hot temper. I think that might be Emily's type, cause all of her boyfriends had a problem with their temperament and impulse control under anger. Daniel showed with Ashley that he still has such problems when it comes to jealousy. And we definitely saw it with Aiden both in the flashback episodes and the recent past. Spoiler alert. When Jack's life is starting to fall apart, we will see this, too, on his behalf. So I think it is like in this old saying, opposites attract. Emily is always so controlled and allows herself not to be that impulsive. Maybe it is a character streak she secretly admires on her men and on Fauxmanda as well. Daniel's little harass of Emily was funny and sad. He is so full of hope, like all the Emily and Daniel shippers, I am sure. But she is just toying with him by playing it cool and trying to keep him at distance. Maybe there is also a little bit of guilt and bad conscience the reason for this decision. Even for Emily it cannot be easy playing this charade now with two men. In season 1 she could fool herself as her feelings for Daniel progressed and playing his fiancé seemed almost real. But now she brought Aiden in this and has to consider his feelings, too. By the way, I love the obvious color scheme of her. Emily is wearing a lot of black and white, hinting at her problem being on the right side of this story. Since she herself does some at least questionable things during this season. I talk a lot about bad writing in this season. But I have to admit that they found an elegant way to attach Emily to her new targets and move the plot into this direction. By just using her status as socialite and being engaged in different charities. First we had the Liberty Project with Judge Barnes in the previous episode. Now we have this childcare project. Spoiler alert. Which will involve Amanda's foster mother. Though I must admit it was again a missed opportunity for the writers to explore Amanda's and Emily's past further. They could have reunited the two girls against a common enemy. But I guess they were too busy with the Ryan brothers plot. instead of introducing her foster brother for no real reason. They could have used the common past of young Amanda and Emily. 'Cause as we learned in Season 1, the real Emily Thorne ended up in jail by protecting herself before an abusive foster father. And Emily burned down her foster home, which could have been because of the same reason, to get out of an abusive home. That would have made us root even more for those UV girls, as it was a good explanation for their need for security and an excellent excuse for their violent behavior. Fauxmanda could have helped Emily to put down her foster mother, and Emily would have done the same in return by tracking down Fauxmanda's foster father. All garnished with some great and dramatic flashbacks of how brave Emily fought back her foster father and Amanda rescuing herself and the other kids from that abusive foster care by burning down the house. But that belongs to another episode. It unfortunately takes place, spoiler alert, after Fauxmanda's sudden death. About Fauxmanda visiting Jack in prison. Funny how they mirror the scene from Season 1 when Emily visited Daniel in prison. Only this one is much less emotional. Now it is Fauxmanda's turn to help Jack get out of jail, and she is in full defense and attack mode. Her idea of involving either Emily or Nolan was the best possible choice. It makes me sick that Jack is that stubborn. He could have avoided a lot of drama and problems for his family if he just agreed. About the insurance plot behind all this initiative mess. I must admit I admire how brave they were with this. Honestly, I did not know about these topics before I researched some trivia for one of my revenge videos. This idea that there is a business model which really involves profiting of a disastrous event by making money out of insurance policies. That is really despicable even for the Graysons and a terror organization. Again, something they should have underlined by giving us something to watch rather than just telling us with Conrad's words. The reason why this season is so dull is that they really give us not very much to get emotionally involved. In Season 1 we always felt Emily's righteous anger about Ashley working with Conrad. This was the only storyline I really enjoyed of her. Being that treacherous to blackmail her way back into the Grayson fold, as she says it herself. Spoiler alert. And then her regaining her conscience and working together with Jack in the season finale. It is a shame that she came back for one episode in Season 3 only to leave. This could have been a great ending for her storyline. Though it might have been out of character for her, but she could have sacrificed herself to save one of the Porter boys as the building went down. That could have been a more emotional and fulfilling exit for her by redeeming her character. But I guess this is not the style of revenge. About Emily's green dress and the wine auction. I am not sure if green or petrol was the color of the season, but I like that she is wearing it while getting back together with Daniel. 'Cause green stands for jealousy, and that is the theme of this ménage à trois between her, Daniel and Aiden. The two men are both very much jealous of one another and compete for Emily's affection. And Daniel is right, she really looks casual and gorgeous in this floating dress with the golden earrings. Her updo underlines her beautiful swan-like neck and her sporty slim figure. I fell in love with Nolan's black vest with the flowers on it, too. This one was one of my favorite outfits of him because the vest gives his unusual serious black suit the right amount of fashionable style. Nolan's funny lines and Aiden's appreciation was nice to see.
Looks like Fauxmanda's part dev's a runaway success. How's your other boyfriend handling it? Oh, look at you, all gussied up like 007 again.
So what do you got for us today, Q?
Perfect.
Let's have you on the team.
This and the unintentionally funny and odd wine auction were the only things that made this episode watchable for me. About Fauxmanda and Charlotte, though in the long run it was a mistake turning to Conrad, this was not a bad idea. using Charlotte and her wish to help Declan to get out of this mess. For once it was really painful to see how everything went downhill as usually when the Graysons were involved. It would have been really better if they had involved Nolan or Emily sooner. About Daniel's behavior during the wine auction. It was really embarrassing how he is so obviously flirting with Emily. The level of insecurity and doubt he has about Emily and their relationship in Season 3 is only matched with his self-confidence in this scene. About Fauxmanda trying to deal with the Ryan brothers on her own. It was telling that she stole Conrad's watch to buy a gun. If Jack has not come back cause of Conrad's intervention in the last minute, she had done a terrible mistake again. This would have been her third murder. After Frank and the attempt on Mason. I know it is kind of brave but also very stupid that she tries to confront Nate. About Victoria and Conrad's competitor in business. Though it lasted only for 2 episodes, I really liked this pairing. By pursuing this businessman, Victoria gets 2 for the price of 1. She can sabotage Daniel's acquisition for the initiative and hurt Conrad by flirting with some of his old enemies. Red seems to be her color too when she is up to something. Spoiler alert. When she was plotting against Emily in Season 3 and 4, she also wore sometimes red. And who can forget the red dress in which she presumably killed herself? About the stunt of Emily Nolan and Aiden for Helen Crowley. For me this whole sequence was a little too much. They are making this complicated story up just to make Helen trust Aiden. And who thinks Helen is behind this? She says she has her suspicions. Does this mean she thinks the Grayson hired them? And was that Emily's plan, too?
Let's see if she buys it.
About the last scene with Daniel. Though I am not a big fan of Emily and Daniel in Season 2, I really enjoyed that scene. That he really drinks this 1 million bottle of wine with her and even says she is worth it is just so sweet of him. Daniel can be a very generous and sweet guy. And Emily's monologue at the end was finally again very fitting to the situation with her and Daniel. But they entered a nice twist with the wine being bad. That made this scene less serious and more playful since both must have been stressed. Daniel because he is not sure if Emily really takes him back, and Emily because she is again asking herself how far she is willing to go for her revengender. A nice turn was that Aiden comes over playing the jealous ex. I like how the two are talking in code cause, trust me, obviously means Aiden should trust Emily with Daniel and not only with his things. About Padma's call. At first watch this was a shock to me. I knew something was not right with her when she found that Czech and Emily was suspicious. But I never thought that she would collude with this terror organization. Spoiler alert. So this was really a huge cliffhanger and I was happy that they resolved this very quick in the next episode.